common sense would tell you that this
Well,
should be
Alright, before I begin the round, I just want to congratulate all the debaters for making it this far. My name is Heiji. I'll be chairing this round along with Ji-sung and Sandy. It is a pleasure for me to judge you all, and I wish you good luck. Before any further ado, I would like to invite the Prime Minister to start the debate. Hear, hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, developing countries currently suffer from the brain drain, which means they suffer from the lack of the expertise, lack of the intelligent person, because many richer person, many intelligent person have a strong incentive to go out to the abroad, go out abroad. And as a result of that, developing country is getting harder and harder to develop and catch up with the developed country. And we think that is the problem we want to rectify by taking this round. I want to talk about mainly like three things. Number one, I want to clearly explain about the context and what is a clear problem and impact in developing countries. Second, I want to explain to you how our program can fix that problem on all sides of the house. And lastly, I want to justify to take this brand and restrict individual choices to remain in that area for a certain period of the time. But before that's like simple model, right? I think in this debate, that how long they should remain is not so that matter. That is another debate. But maybe 3 years or 5 years or this kind of we will establish that short certain period of the time to remain. And the criteria to impose this policy is a nationality, which means even if some people are enrolling in Harvard University, if their nationality is a developing country in that area, we think these people should be the target to this motion as well. That is the model we will take on this day.
clarification.
Yes.
So would you also require people who are entirely funding their education with their own money to still come back and then work in their home country after they finish
Yes,
university?
we are happy to that. I would justify it even in these cases in our side of the house. Okay, move on to my first segmentation. What is a clear problem within the developing country? We have to realize that in the developing country, there is a structural gap between the rich and poor and elite and not, which means that only smart people or only limited person can access to the high quality education, or these people have access or choices to move on to the very good university or good developed country, etc., etc. Only richer person have a choice to go to the abroad and to get a higher job and etc., etc. Because only these people have, because there is an asymmetrical gap between the rich and the poor people cannot access to the high quality education or cannot access to the choice itself to move to that developed country, etc., etc. And only richer person or only smart person, elite person have a strong incentive not to move on to that abroad university rather than remain in a developing country. And we think that is a problematic thing in two key respects. Number one is the country will be harder and harder to develop, which means that if many richer person prioritize their own interest than the nation. We think company, for example, cannot get a good worker, maybe that country couldn't see the good politician, people who have learned politics within the good university, etc., etc. Country cannot have an expertise and good intelligent person who have a potential to develop the country, right? That which means, for example, maybe developing country have to shift their direction from the agriculture to IT industry, for example. But these people who are learning IT or engineering might have an incentive to go to the foreign company because these people can get more money, more salary by doing so. And as a result of it, we think that developed country have to continue to focus on the agriculture and they will never catch up with the developed country, and the developed country suffering will continue forever. That is the first problem. Second problem is that if the richer person, we think, under their problem, richer person or intelligent person will never get the incentive to improve the country's situation. Because, for example, environmental issue, for example, working environment, for example, feminism issue, LGBT issue, all these kind of issues will not be addressed by the richer person because they know anyway they will escape from that situation after they graduate university. These people do not have any incentive to care about these social issues, political issues, economical issues, for example. And this is problematic thing because this richer person, intelligent person, is a very important actor to change that situation, right? Maybe if they can be, if they were politicians and they have a strong incentive to rectify that problem, maybe that problem can be addressed. But these people will not care on the other side of the house, and these problems will be continue to remain. And we think the developing country will continue to be outdated on the other side of the house. That is the problem. How our problem can fix that problem? Number one is the first benefit is that many richer person or intelligent person might continue to remain after that minimum period of time. Why is that? Because the current period of time, as a norm, richer person have a presumption that going to the abroad company is one of the elite course and one of the very good choices before thinking and considering the choice to remain. Which means we think that by putting the opportunity to forcibly remain in that area, their own country, maybe with some richer person, some intelligent person notice or living in that country is also good choices, and we can provide that choices on the other side of the house, like in particularly on the other side of the house, before consider that choices. Many people preemptively think going to the abroad company and a foreign company is a very good choices without thinking about other choices. That's why we think by putting the opportunity to remain in that area forcibly, we might incentivize some richer person to remain in that area. And if we succeed in to do so, these people can contribute to the development of the country. That is the first benefit, right? And we consider that not all people will continue to remain, but still that is a very good thing. Why is that? Because if they know they have to anyway remain in that area for 3 years, for example, or 5 years, for example, these people will get the incentive to improve the situation within the country. For example, if they know they have to be employed in their own domestic company, maybe they will also care about the company's working environment. Maybe they want to tackle with the sexual harassment within the company, for example, or working condition, etc., etc. That's kind of putting the incentive to care about the issue and improve and rectify that problem really can be done on the other side of the house, even if some people anyway will go to the other company, other country, right? So that is our paradigm, how our paradigm looks. I want to justify this motion in two respects. Number one is that we have to realize the reason why they could succeed in the access to the very good university or, for example, gets that ability is because country will continue to invest to that person, right? The reason why they can succeed in that is they living in that area, use the resources within the country, for example, or even that they are living in the foreign country, still the mere fact they have a nationality or some kind of condition of the country is a very enough reason that enough justification to impose certain restriction upon them. I think these people, as an actor who use that resources within the country, have an obligation to pay back some kind of benefit towards the country, particularly in the context of the poor people are sacrificed because of the selfish elitism, right? That's why we think that is justifiable thing. Secondly, we have to realize the damage of this motion is not so huge because anyway, after 3 years, 5 years, they can escape from that situation, which means if elite person also can get the experiences within that country, and we think that experiences can be utilized after 3 years or 5 years. And I don't think this motion is so inhumane and cannot be justifiable thing. Considering the benefit and harm of this motion, we should take this plan. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for that speech. Now I would like to invite the leader of opposition. Hear, hear.
unjust to put the burden to the individual to stay in the developing country, because developing country have no the platform to provide those kinds of elite and abilities, people who have a lot of ability to prosper their ability. So therefore, we think that it is unjust, and also we think that practically, we think that to allow individual to go out to the original country, we think that is more beneficial and it lead to development to this original country. And we think that is more beneficial for the developing countries. Therefore, we can about this motion. Three things I'm going to talk about. First of all, as the practical principle level, the why individual right, but we especially talking about the individual who are graduating from the university, why those people how like to go out from the original country. No, thank you. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how those people who have to after taking proposal, the people have to stay in the original country. So why this is so harmful for individual, and also we think that it is so harmful for the original country itself. Thirdly, I explained to you that why in current situation the people can go out from the original countries. Why in our side of us that we can develop the developing countries. So first point, no, thank you. So why individual life is most important thing. So two legal analysis here. First of all, let's talk about education. We think that education is not based on like the pro. We think that it is not provided from the government, and we think that the individual have no right to don't have to pay their country. We think that individual are provided the education because in order to offer the future and expand the future, and also we think that in order to do so, the individual pay money to the university, and they can choose what they want to do in the future. So therefore, we think that those kind of this is the purpose of education. So therefore, we think that it is totally unjust as the education principle. No, thank you. Secondly, we think that we talk about the free movement because we think that the people are born in the people cannot choose what they are born, where they born. So therefore, and also we think that those people cannot choose that this person who are in the family, who are richer family or etc. So therefore, even if this individual can go to university because of the rich family's money, we think that is not that is not privilege of this individual. We think that those people that study by themselves and go to the university. So therefore, we think that those people have right to go out from the original countries, and they can move to other countries. And also, that the Prime Minister talked about that in order to develop developing countries, we think that they want to sacrifice the individual because we think that is a problem of structure in the developing country. We think that is not a problem of the individual who live in the developing countries. So therefore, we think that individual have the. We think that we shouldn't use the individual in order to develop this original country. We think that it is totally unjust for individuals who live in the developing country. No, thank you. So secondly, I will explain to you why after taking proposal it is harmful for individuals, but also we think that it is harmful for countries. We think that in the first place, therefore, in the developing countries, there is no platform to provide for the people who have the ability, etc. We think that why this is so? Because we think that in developing countries, a number of the company, big companies are small, and also we think that on that occasion that those companies cannot provide a good education to grow their skills to the new members. Or also we think that there's a less system which is more justly promote the people who have the ability, and those systems are not established in this company in the developing countries. So therefore, we think even if those people enter the company in the developing country, those people are likely to not to prosper and use their good ability. So therefore, we think that why this is so harmful. First of all, we think that those people cannot return the pay to the university or to pay to the studies wages, because and also those people cannot grow the skill in the company which is in the developing countries, and also we think those abilities are not properly admitted in both in the company, or those people are not assessed by the company. So therefore, those people cannot get income which is linked to the ability or skills, etc. We think that is so harmful for individuals. But also we think that is harmful for the developing countries there, because we think that to live in their country, to live in the original country, those people cannot are satisfied to live in those to live in the original country. So therefore, those people are continuing to stay in the developing countries, because we think that those people are satisfied to live in the family or friends, etc. So therefore, those people are likely to continue to live in the original country. So therefore, those people cannot develop their skills in the different countries, and as a result, developing countries waste their ability, who have a lot of ability, those country that waste those kind of ability, which is so harmful for the countries there. So after taking for the third argument, why in our side of us it is more beneficial? Because we think that in our side of us, those people who have the ability, who have a lot of ability, can go to the developing country, or those people, and also those people enter top company and educated, and those people are likely to entrust a good project, or they have a lot of opportunity to educate in the top company, which is the developing country, and also they learn how to effectively manage the factory, or they can learn the new businesses, and also those people have incentive to go back in the original country, because they have the family and the friends, and they have the connection between the human connection, etc. So therefore, those people are likely to back to the original country, and they already have the advanced skills which is learned from the developing country. So therefore, we think that in order to that is beneficial for individual and countries. Proud of both. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that speech. I would like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, anyway, citizens have the obligation for the country, for example, the tax or pension system, or sometimes they are controlled under the constitution, sometimes they have the obligation to the constitution. But the opposition side says they are standing the basically the anarchy. We think that kind of obligation they can do, what kind of obligation they have to reject, that kind of distinction is necessary or other value of the opposition. But our stance is very clear. We think if the country has the community to the social engineering to protect the many number of the people in the developing country, if this is a very emergency case, we can impose the very citizen to take the obligation. That is the stance from our side of the house. Two things in my speech from the Deputy Prime Minister. Firstly, why this policy is not so harm to the elitist person, which means that who want to opt out of this country, and secondly, why enhancing the competition power is very emergency program for protecting the citizen in the developing country. But before moving on several battle to the side of the house, firstly, they think this limitation is very simply bad, because the people have the right to the freedom of choice. If the people is not satisfied, they have the right to opt out. But ladies and gentlemen, if the people is not satisfied with paying the tax, but they they have to do. Because this tax is a very important thing to protect the many numbers of people. It's a elite just opt out of this obligation. The many number of people is a suffer in the developing country in the first place. That's the reason why the country also impose a many number of the people to take this obligation. But the problem with the opening operation is very clear. Why does this tax is okay? Why the pension is okay? Why contribution is sometimes okay? Why does this now uniquely this motion is very bad? That kind of the explanation is lacking from the opening operation. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, this analysis is not clear in this debate. So let's sit and read. Secondly, they say this birth lottery is basically birth lottery. People can't choose where people born in. But ladies and gentlemen, it's not a problem in this debate. Because ladies and gentlemen, many people also admit to this concept of the country. Also people also know that this is a law of the country or constitution of the country. But ladies and gentlemen, if in the many countries, if the people think this country is very bad, if the people dislike this country and nationality, that's when they can opt out of the nationality in this debate. If our model, if they can opt out of this nationality, also they can avoid this obligation in the first place. That's the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, as long as the people choose to stay in this nationality, they also have the obligation to take this country control in the first place. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, this birth lottery is not a problem in this debate. Okay.
The student just graduated from the university, staying 3 years. How that student contributes to development society?
Ladies and gentlemen, in the uniquely context of developing country, it's not so just graduating in Japan just because in the many universities is not so good in Japan. But in this developing country, this graduating university is already particularly people very elitist person. It means that they also have the very accept many number of good education because they the country expect that country can contribute to this in the future. That's why they have to accept many number of education. Also, they can know many maximum of the economy or trading or many number of the knowledge in the first place. That time, also they have the many knowledge. Also, they can have the power to establish establish a new company because as a result, many elitist developing countries. Many elitists also can now status quo, graduate and abroad, and they can easily actively play an important role in the multinational corporation in the first place. That's why this effect, if they can stay in this developing country, also they can contribute because they are very elitist. It's not so the Japanese person in the first place. So moving on to my substantial, why this policy is not so harm to this elitist person. That their value is very important. Why that minimum period of time is a very significantly harm to in their side house. But we believe that this minimum period of time is not so harm because firstly, this time is just 3 years, the 5 years. If they after that they want to opt out of this country, sometimes they want to go to the abroad. That time they can choose this action in the first place. That's the reason why, even though they just stay in the minimum period of time, at then they can do in this choice in the first place. That's the reason why this harm is also the recoverable in the first place. Secondly, also the staying in this developing country is also the beneficial for this elitist person. Because the staying in the developing country, also sometimes they can establish a venture company or sometimes establish a startup culture. That time, also their experience is very important for the playing the important role in the multinational corporation. For example, in the foreign company also needs the many elitist person, which means that they have the unique experience in this time. That time, this unique experience that contributes in the developing country is very unique for this multinational corporation, right? That's the reason why in after period of time, that's the kind of the elitist person can play their important role in the multinational corporation, right? That's the reason why this harm is not so harm in the first place. Also, this staying the period of time is very important for the elitist person. So secondly, why enhancing the competition power to emergency program? Because each country is exposed to competition under the capitalist world. Now the capitalism is a very, very cruel because if competition power is less than any other country, this country is exploited. Reason why each country seeks their own profit to gain the profit. If they exploit a weak country, this profit is very easily gained. For example, in the developing country, is exploited in the many developed countries. For example, in the Bangladesh, the Uniqlo established the many factory. It means that this factory hired many citizens in the developing country with the lower age. That's why these people people cannot opt out of this situation in the past. Reason is very clear. This country is very weak. Also, they have no power to guarantee the many minimum standard rights for the many number of people. That reason is very clear. Also, many elitist persons opt out or abandon this country. They are never contribute to this developing country. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, these people, they have no power to opt out of this Bangladesh. It have to stay in this country. Only elitist person have to satisfy with their situation in the past. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, if the solution is this solution is very important to the people who have to stay in this developing country. Only the elitist person have the power to protect the many number of people. That's the reason why they have the obligation to protect this many number of people. That's the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, this solution is a very important legitimacy to protect the many number of people. Also, this elitist person is not so harmed by this policy. For those reasons, we propose motion.
Thank you so much for your speech. Now I would like to invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here, here.
Thank you very much. Let's check at the current business of model or developing country. By utilizing that mass number of the cheap labor, they making that mass production by cheap price. So even they still continue to that business model, the developing country cannot compete enough with that developed country, and also that anyway the salary of that cheap labor doesn't change enough, which means that still that even just continuing that idea, unfortunately, are true. That we recognizing that adding new value or that making the new business model is quite important to the changing the current society. That's why we recognizing that the person who want to go into that outside of the society and also to run something from the foreign company, we more than happy to support them and they actually come back to and contributing to society. That's why we recognizing that compared with that, in your product, that person can do in 3 years, 5 years, can just do in developed country. It's just typing that Excel, just making that unfortunately simple work. And also they are already just not lose interest to the foreign country, or they already just gaining, accepting that sometimes the discriminated culture, traditional culture in that country. That's why we recognizing that in terms of contributing the developing country, we think that still people who want to go into the foreign country, we allow, it's rather beneficial to just developing their own nation. That's how from the opening opposition. I have three clashes on this debate. Furthermore, unfortunately, the opening guy did not explain to us how the people who stay in the developing country contribute in the development or they contribute in changing culture. They just say that they are elite. Maybe they can change culture, they are making that new business, but they did not actually explain to us how they can do so. That's why we explain to you that these 3 points. First of all, that's how they stay in that even the 3 years, 5 years, stay in that developing country, making that negligence of the people. And secondly, that's how the people after that work as a foreign country coming back to the developing country, how they contribute in developing business. Lastly, how they can, because they do not have that stay in that the traditional culture, they can introducing that sometimes the opportunity to criticizing the traditional, some extent discriminated particular persons. We found a couple of responses what previous speaker has said. They told us people do not try to change in the anyway, they go into the foreign country, etc. Unfortunately, that mechanism it still happen even in a house because people can just live the beer 3 years, 5 years, and they can go to the foreign country. They can still have incentive to just ignore. It's more better because they are voicing out that issue in this company, issue in this country. They significantly criticize in their own nation. Many majority people do not take in risks, just here, just go out of society. So furthermore, we recognizing that majority of persons after the 3 years, 5 years stay, they are having I explained that. Okay, and furthermore, they talking about the multinational corporation in domestic area. I thought maybe that The first of all, the seat of the multinational corporation is extremely limited one because majority of the cases that foreign the multinational corporation employs a person that bring from the original nation was another nation was capable one. So on that occasion, the seat of the domestic person is a certain extent limited one. Furthermore, we think that the still certain number of people stay in that domestic area. That even do not continue introducing that system, still certain number of people employed in the multinational corporation. Also, they told us majority of people going to that foreign country, ignore that domestic area, etc. As I already, first of all, that's not true. Still, that people living that state, they are growing up in the domestic, developing countries. They have family, they have friends. Your neighbor suffer from that lack of medicine, the lack of that food. They still not knowing that they have already sympathizing that issue. So that people do not so much significantly selfish to just ignoring things. So if that person, so much that selfish person exists, anyway that person going to outside the country after 3 years, 5 years. So that's what we focus on is that people certain extent sympathize their own country and the sense of the contributing nation. So for that person, how to use 3 years, 5 years is better for development. That's the debate from we address from the opening opposition. Move on first issue about making people readiness. Yes.
Okay, as a fact, many Indian students get the jobs in Silicon Valley, and most of them will not go back to India. But why do you think your case is true and many people will sympathize their own country?
Because that's after they are running us. Oh, of course, we don't say that 100% people coming back, but still certain number of people going to and running actually coming to that. I already explained to you that. Still, they have a sense of the sympathy, still have a sense of the nationality. They have this enough reason to coming back. So the issue of that thing. So what they are feeling from that, they are contributing society. But unfortunately, they are still not staying in the business model, mass production and cheap labor. So on that occasion, even still the company try to manage them. Unfortunately, the majority of the case, the simple work. We do not say that this is physical work or the agriculture. We don't say that. But still, that work is very simple. That writing that, just typing that Excel, or that's just making that some paper, or that's unfortunately extremely simple one, but extremely weird one. Because even they can do so that they can making profit by using mass production, mass cheap labor. Majority of the case, developing country business model is such one. The furthermore, they reckon also that on that occasion that university students, first of all, they can learn anything without the skill of the Excel. They cannot contribute in society. Just they can do is typing Excel. Anyway, they do not contribute in society. Furthermore, they are already lose interest in the foreign country because they stay in even that certain extent that traditional one. They are already habituated that your boss is that sometimes that's respecting the things. They are already habituated with that culture. So people also lose interest in the foreign country. So compare with that, why does going to the foreign corporation is better than things? They can learn from the two things. The first of all, that's making the efficient system to the business model by introducing the digital system in supply chain management. They can making that comparatively make more cutting cost or that make production. Furthermore, they can the most importantly, they learning that how to add that value on that particular product. For example, utilizing commercial strategy, they can write. For example, the volume to run that way of the commercialization by from the high. That's why they can success in this thing. The issue is not that simple labor. Its issue is the commercialization and adding the new thing. So on that occasion, this is the moment people cannot develop in their own country, making more additional salary and developing and more higher quality of things. Last issue, sorry, that's changing the thing. They are talking about that, I don't know, like that discrimination issue, cultural issue, etc. By the stuff, they can go into foreign country, they can making connection with that another country. Important thing is that changing that this kind of domestic issue, the making connection with that foreign this feminist movement or the LGBT movement is important because gaining that support from that country. That's why we thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech. And now to begin the back half of the debate, I would like to invite the member of government here.
debate was a bit of a mess because they didn't provide the context in which these policies have impact, right? So we're not talking about countries like India or China where university grads are plenty, right? We don't think that that's the biggest impact in this debate. So we're going to contextualize and ground this debate and extend on the principal case we get from government. I think it's more than just they took resources. We think it's the context in which they took resources from society which gives them a moral obligation. And we're going to give you 3 practical contributions. Firstly, how university grads start up industries. Secondly, how FDI, foreign direct investment happens. And thirdly, how contribution to tertiary education systems is so important from university grads in countries like Cambodia and Congo, where they literally do not have a sufficient number of highly educated individuals who are willing to come and essentially set up shop, right? So extending on from OG, right? They basically said that they took resources from society's thing to pay them, right? We don't think that that in itself is problematic, but we think that the context in which they did that is problematic, right? The birth lottery that they talked about, and secondly, the fact that the vast majority of people in these countries who are very, very rich and highly connected, who tend to be the people who go to universities, are the types of people who corruptly got that capital, right? We think that that means that these people have a moral debt to society insofar as that is true. But then thirdly, we tell you that because developing countries, and especially low-income countries where this debate is most relevant, right? Those are the countries where there is extreme poverty. We think they have a general obligation to help those who are the worst off. We don't think we should be going off to rich countries and helping those big corporations, right? They have a bigger moral obligation to help the very, very poor in the country. Not because they're countrymen, because they have a general obligation. But then fourthly, the countrymen obligation. We think that they're in a unique place to help those people in their own country. It's like conscription, right? The reason why we don't conscript foreign nationals or pay foreign nationals to come is because we're in a unique situation to understand the local context. We think that we have a special political connection to the nation. In the same way, they're in a unique position to help those people in their country simply because they understand the local circumstances, because they don't have those language barriers, cultural barriers that might hold back other people from the outside from helping, right? So because they're in a unique position, we think that moral obligations stem from a unique position that you're in. This is opposed to O's idea that they cannot choose, because we think that moral obligations in general aren't choices. If I'm walking down the street and there's a child drowning, right, I have a moral obligation whether I chose to be in that situation or not. In the same way, they were born, unfortunately, into a developing country, but because they're in that unique situation, they have that moral obligation. Unique contribution number 1. Right? Unique contribution number 2. Starting up industries, right? University grads in low-income countries tend to be 3 things. Firstly, they're highly connected. Secondly, they're capital owning, meaning that their parents tend to be very, very rich and their families tend to be very well connected. Thirdly, they have understanding of the industrial landscape of that country because of all of these things, right? And notice that these countries, the countries where this debate is most relevant, countries like Cambodia, there are very few jobs available for university graduates, right? The focus on agriculture and a lack of complex businesses means that the education that they got from, for example, France or Germany or the United States, right, they're not really useful in these countries, right? So most likely scenario, what's going to happen is that using these connections in capital and the know-how that they have, they're probably going to set up shop, they're going to set up businesses, and they're going to succeed. Why? Because 2 reasons. Firstly, because they're well connected and because they can navigate the industrial landscape and the bureaucratic landscape very successfully due to all of the connections, right? But then secondly, we tell you that because these countries have a very, very small industrial base, because they have a very nascent industrial base, there is firstly low barriers to entry in most businesses, so consumer products are very easy to succeed in. But then secondly, we say that there's very low saturation, so there's very little competition in those industries that are most likely to succeed, right? The impact of this is firstly that there's job creation and community economic development, right? Unlike what they say, essentially we're gonna get some sort of know-how, right, from working abroad and then coming back to the country, right? Now we have concrete economic development on the ground for local people. But then secondly, we tell you more importantly, we have incentive alignment on the part of the very, very rich and powerful, right? So the mechanism that was missing from opening half is essentially why these people have an incentive to help those people on the ground. What we do is, for the 3 to 5 years, whatever period of time that we choose, right, they're going to be there and be setting up businesses. What this means is that even if, after that period, they go abroad, they have an incentive to care about the country, right, and more people than just their families, right, simply because they have businesses on the ground that they have to tend to, and that's directly in the self-interest. But then secondly, we tell you that FDI is much, much more important than remittances, right? So like no matter what opposition says about like sending representatives and know-how, right? That's puny compared to the amount of money that you can get from global hedge funds that exclusively invest in developing countries, right? So like you can think of things like the quantum fund, right? That might throw billions of dollars in developing countries, right? The entry barrier to navigating investment in these countries are fourfold. Firstly, language barriers, because investors don't really speak the local language. Secondly, bureaucratic navigation, because these countries tend to have very complex bureaucratic problems, and so you have to circumvent that bureaucracy. Third, cultural barriers. Fourthly, a mistrust of local, because you don't really know what the landscape looks like, right? And the reason why university graduates uniquely solve this problem is because in the countries that we told you are most relevant to this debate, they don't really have a tertiary education system. Most of the time, these university graduates who are the most relevant to this debate will be foreign university grads. And that seal of approval, the fact that they went to Harvard, the fact that they went to Sciences Po, right, means that they're more likely to attract investment. Yes. So,
when a laborer goes abroad to a developed country to work, that person is also significantly bettering his or her status and earning a lot more money. So will you force them to come back to the home country as well after 3 years?
No, because I don't think that those people have that unique moral obligation. So like this principal point stands, and then the practical benefits follow. Because these rich people, these rich and powerful people who tend to be the university grads, uniquely got their loot from unjust social structures that unfairly advantage them, right? We think that they have a moral obligation. We don't think that ordinary workers who are working minimum wage jobs have the same obligation, right? So we think that what that means is that you significantly increase the probability of these countries getting foreign direct investment, and especially when they have personal connections to these investors, you're going to significantly increase the amount of investment. Then thirdly, very briefly, contribution to the tertiary education system. There's almost a non-existent tertiary education systems in these countries, and there's a significant barrier to development. Why? 3 reasons. Firstly, knowledge-based industries can't work, so the know-how transfers just don't work because they don't have highly educated people. And secondly, uni connections don't exist, university connections don't exist, and so cooperation is very difficult for businesses. So like, what happens is that you get highly educated individuals who are better at, who have really good knowledge about various things, and you set up shop, and you get professors, and you develop these economies, right? At the end of the day, like we tie the principle of essentially giving back to society, fairly sharing burdens, with the idea of economic development. The only team that provides you context, that's why you're in this debate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I would like to invite the member of opposition. Here, here.
Here, here.
chairs. So this debate operates so far to whether this is justifiable to impose require for the labor, or this is better for the development of the European country or not. So closing government said further why this is justifiable, and also we also told you the whole problem of the government bench is the government bench plan is not harmful for the worker, but also even we take the government plan, the country will not develop at the end of the day. This is a problem, and we will contribute to say why this is not justifiable and why our parliament will rather develop the European country and make the situation of people better off, the infrastructure better off. That's why we should propose our plan. So before that, capital rebuttal to the whole government bench and kick down the whole government bench. So firstly, the opening government came up here, like poor people can't access to the good education. That's why we should require that. So firstly, if they require them, we think the gap between rich they will get a job in the local area. So the people living in the local area can't get a job because otherwise they will otherwise the position local labor get will require or occupied by the rich people. So the rich people will get more money and local people can't get work in this area. So the gap between rich and poor will increase. And rather than we say, even if they work for 3 or 5 years, they will not contribute to the country well because they just graduated, they just knowledge or just theory. Even if they get the PhD thesis, they just knowledge, they have no experience to work. So it is very difficult to startup culture, they work a company and contribute to the country. We think it is unrealistic. And also talk about the justification. They say because country investigated, so they have we can justify to require. We say firstly, they already paid tax for their country when they were in the country. So we think this is unproportionate tax for them to unproportionate burden for the rich people to stay in the country. And moreover, we say the Deputy Prime Minister told us the people admit their country, so it is okay to opt out from that country. We think this is a harm. If the people, especially rich people, have a capacity to change nationality and opt out from that country, this is rather harmful because they will never go back to their country because there is no nationality in the country. Rather than in our paradigm, they will study or work for 5 or 10 years, and after that they have an incentive to go back to their country because they have a nationality, they have nationality or they have affinity to their country. So if they wish or if their country will make a better condition like a favorable tax rate or good condition for that worker, they have incentive to go back. In their paradigm, it will never happen. That is harmful. More than that, the closing government tried to extend somehow they changed the context to the extreme for a country like Congo or Cambodia. They said because in this country they know the bureaucratic scale well, so they should stay there. We think firstly, if the people who want to go up to the business, they will start business. But this is not the reason to require all people to work for 3 or 5 years to stay there. More than that, we say the foreign direct investment is important, as the member of the government said. We think it is not mutually exclusive. If we make a favorable tax revenue or good condition, the foreign company anyway come. This is not also not the reason to require for them to stay in their country. And also we think even they stay for 5 or work for 3 or 5 years, they will not contribute to the country. And more than that, after that, they will go to other foreign countries to seek the better conditions. That is rather harmful. So the contribution to the extension number 1, why it is principally unjust to require for them to work 3 or 5 years. So firstly, because of the lottery of fast. Because they just born their country, they have to work 3 or 5 years, it is unjust. We have 2 reasons why we need to work when they are young. Firstly, because if they acquire the skills for their work, they can contribute for a long time. And secondly, more importantly, your brain will gradually worse and worse. I am 28 and I fear my brain is getting worse and worse, maybe compared with 22. So we think we have to note that your brain is getting lower and lower, so we need to get experience to work when they are very young. So it is important, 3 or 5 years, it is crucial for them. And secondly, we say it is more impact for the developing country. So the first impact about the education competence. We think firstly, if the country very elite or rich people can't stay in the university and they go back to their country and they have a more impose many new idea and the educational level within the country will be improved because of the competence with each other. Secondly, because we can make a better economy or better companies there, because it is important or crucial to work in the foreign country and acquire very skills, for example, negotiation versus the teamwork, for example, how to invest the market theory. It is important to before they work, because just theory doesn't work in the market but opening.
If brain gets worse and worse, which means young people can contribute to the country because these young people is very young after the graduate.
As I said before, just after graduate, they can't contribute to their country. I already said many reasons why. So we think, let me explain more why they can't
contribute just to graduate their work. We need in the university we learn just about the theory about for example when they work Toyota company, there was theory how to make vehicles and how to invest in the market. But actual society is not true. It is different from the theory. It is different from the university. So we need to experience to actually work in that workplace, and this experience is only happened in the foreign country because there is no infrastructure in that country. So this is a unique experience to work for that foreign country. And finally, why medium building a better international Thailand movement? We think the interaction between foreign countries is very important to import to make better development. When we think about the debating society, 10 years ago, there were no agricultural system in Japan, but because Akira Kato interacted with other foreign debaters and imposed agricultural system, Japan developed well, and Japan grew in the world WBC and developed happens. We should appreciate Akira Kato very well. We think this interaction is actual. If we require for them to stay 3 or 5 years, that interaction won't happen, so development also won't happen. So for those reasons, it is principally unjust and also undermine the development of the country. We are very happy to oppose.
Thank you so much for your speech. Now I'd like to invite the government whip. Here.
Proposing government in today's way has uniquely done two things. Number one, they have provided you with a specific context as to why this policy is so much important and necessary. And secondly, we told you the unique role of these current university graduates as to why these people are the only stakeholders who can actually uniquely contribute to their own domestic economy. That exactly is the reason as to why we believe that these people actually have a moral obligation, and secondly, these people actually have a unique contribution to the countries that they originated from. That's why we were going to propose this motion. I'm going to talk about 2 points in my speech. Number one, about the justification as to why the contribution from these university graduates are so much necessary. And secondly, about the effectiveness. What kind of contribution can these kind of people can make at the end of the day? Number one, why contribution? We believe that the problem of opening have is that they only focus on the individual level in terms of justification, right? We believe the opening government talk about how individuals get benefit and investment. And secondly, opening opposition also talk about why individuals actually have the freedom to even choose to live in such a rich neighborhood in the developing country. We believe that the problem is that they don't actually talk about the context and the structure as to what kind of, context and the structure in which these kind of people actually gain and garner benefits, right? We believe that exactly was provided to these kind of people. And we also told you the urgency of the situation, right? Our member has told you that there is no difference with military conscription, especially when there is extreme economic poverty that is ongoing within these kind of nations. If you don't make economic development, if you don't stabilize the economy in these kind of extremely impoverished developing nations, these people are going to die out. We believe that these kind of economic instability and insecurity is so much harsh and hampered in the status quo. That's why these kind of people actually have so big moral obligation to contribute in an economic level and make up certain economic developments at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, we believe that regardless of their choices to be born in such rich neighborhood or not, they actually have to recognize that they actually have gained benefits at the expense of other people who are actually living in that neighborhood, living in that particular domestic country. That's why we have some moral obligation is actually existed under their side. And also we told you that there are unique situations that these people can only fulfill. These people have political connections, these people have language adjacency, these people also have cultural similarity in terms of these kind of domestic economy and culture and whatnot. That's why these people are the best stakeholders who can actually garner better economic development in the most efficient level. That's why we believe that in terms of principal justification, these people are the best actors who best deserve to fulfill these kind of obligations at the end. Second part, what the effectiveness, what kind of contribution, right? We believe the opening half didn't manage to answer the question of what kind of unique contribution can these kind of graduates can actually make. We believe the opening government somewhat tried to make up certain contributions, but didn't actually clarify what kind of specific contribution that these people can actually make. And then that's why we believe that just make response that university graduates cannot know anything, so they have to learn more from foreign corporations, right? We believe that was the important point coming from opening opposition. Number one, we believe that even if you don't actually have that kind of experience of corporation, the experience and the culture that you have experienced throughout that particular foreign culture and foreign university in and of itself is so much unique and important for economic development to be made in these kind of developing countries. And secondly, more importantly, we believe that is self-contradiction coming from their side of the house. Because we believe they talk about individual freedom and they talk about as to why these kind of people actually need some freedom of choice to go out of their country. And then we believe that their point of experience and experience in foreign corporation is contingent upon the premise that these people necessarily have to come back to the nation and contribute somehow to their nation. That's why even if they don't actually even if they actually go to other countries and actually learn something, under the premise that these kind of people don't actually have a clear incentive to go back to their country and do something back and give back to their nation, we believe that without that kind of analysis coming from opening opposition and closing opposition, we believe that they cannot actually make that thing. We believe that both of the opposition bench actually only talk about nationality, why these people actually have some national bonds to their domestic nation. Then we believe that if they actually have that certain level of nationality, we don't actually see the reason as to why these people actually want to go out of their nation at the first place, right? We believe that we didn't actually see any kind of why these people are going to suddenly happen to have a certain level of nationality suddenly and try to go back to their nation after going to foreign corporations. That's the reason as to why our members' contribution is so much important. We told you that incentive alignment is only happening under our side of the house, right? We told you that because you actually have a startup in your domestic nation, because you have done something already in your nation, that's why you actually have some incentive to more care about your nation, more care about your economy at the end, because that is directly related to your economic incentive as well. We told you that's the reason, that's why from the starting point, they actually need to have certain economic direct relationship with that domestic nation. That's why we believe that incentive alignment is only happening under a opposing government. What's our members' contribution in this thing? Number one, we told you about the specific context, extremely impoverished countries like Cambodia, and secondly, we told you the unique impact, right? We believe that these try to talk about monetary support as to why opening opposition can simply give money back, and when CEO talks about paying taxes, we told you that there are unique contributions that these kind of people can actually make. Number one, these people can actually make startups and actually create more and more jobs, not only simply giving back the money, and secondly, we told you that they can only garner foreign investment, especially when they actually don't have any kind of connection, and they actually have a certain level of credibility because they have actually went to these kind of Harvard University and Yale University. We believe that these kind of foreign investors can actually further on more economic policies, more welfare policies in order for their society to be stabilized. We also talked about educational establishment, especially where there is no education at all in these kind of countries, because that these kind of educational establishment can only happen on the outside of the house as well. For all these reasons, for them political policy.
Alright, thank you so much for your speech. And now to close out the entire debate, I would like to invite the opposition whip. Here.
I think the government whip is putting his eggs in the wrong basket. Like, context is not really very important in this debate. First of all, on the principle level, if in principle you have an obligation, it shouldn't matter whether your developing country is China, which is fairly advanced, or maybe Indonesia in the middle, or Cambodia, which is low. It's the same principle obligation. So in terms of that extension, context doesn't matter. All my rebuttals and extensions of what my member said will be dealt with in all those contexts, and we think it applies equally. Second, in terms of the practical benefits, I could just make a similar argument. Every developing country, whether you're more developed or less developed, has the same incentive to be developing. It's developing to a higher state. So if you're China, you want to be on par with the US. If you're Indonesia, you want to be on par with China. And if you're Cambodia, you want to be on par with Indonesia. It's the same process. It involves the same dynamics. This is actually, just to do a sort of pre-rebuttal before I get to the practical impact part of my speech, this is actually where their analysis on government bench fails from the beginning, because in order to develop, you're not just developing in the context of your own country, you have to develop in context of competing with your next competitor up the ladder. And to do that, as Kota told you quite extensively, it requires more in-depth knowledge than simply 4 years of college, which sort of puts you on an entry level, but doesn't actually make you an active competitor at that next level. So I'm going to do two things in my speech. I'm going to talk about where they should have put their eggs in the principal extension, and why the principal extension of CG can't win this debate. And then I'm going to talk about the practical impacts, which these two clashes have been pretty much running through the whole debate. Okay, in principle, they say that you have greater privilege, society has given you more by lottery of birth, therefore you have an absolute moral obligation. That's a pretty good argument. I actually like it a lot, because it's independent of any impacts in that sense. It just means you should. It means judges, you should vote if that stands. But the problem is it doesn't stand. They never really gave a very good answer to my POI. They never really gave a very good answer to Kota's statement about how taxes are already a representation of that obligation. I'm going to elaborate just a little bit more on that, because it's an important clash. So the POI was, if a laborer goes abroad, they better their status, they're earning more money, they're saving. Why don't they have also this same kind of legal obligation to then come home and use that extra capital to start their business in their home country? Why are they allowed to stay? Point. There's no clear line. I'll take you in about 1 minute after I finish rebutting your points. So there's no clear line because a lot of these laborers, and to give a very specific example, like in Korea, the owner of this restaurant called First Nepal, he started as a Nepalese laborer working in Korea. Accumulated some capital, built a restaurant. Now he's a private business owner. Probably lives better than 95% of the people in Nepal. Okay, and then they seem to want to talk about only the super rich who are already, very privileged in their own country, and then maybe they get a high school and university degree. But where do you draw the line of obligations? It's if you're making an absolute requirement of contributing back to the society, and you claim that the only way you can do that is by being in your home country, there has to be some kind of line. Even if there's not a line, they've never met their burden to explain why this obligation to social contribution overcomes other obligations, fundamental human rights, such as the right to freedom of movement, the right to self-determination, the right to fulfill your own educational aspirations and decide what's best for you. Before I go on, I'll take the point from closing.
The reason why laborers don't have that kind of obligation, like I explained, is because even though we don't know the line, right, there is a line, and we can look at the extremities of those lines, right? And we can look at university grads as really privileged people.
Yeah, okay, so you're talking about, if you're talking about the context you want to talk about, Cambodia, you're talking about the top 1%, or 1/10 of 1%, the super rich. That's going to be a really key characterization in my second rebuttal about practical impacts. Before I go on, I'll take one from opening two, just to get it out of the way.
You should notice that your side also bear the burden to draw a line. So do you oppose any kind of restriction upon citizens such as progressive taxes or constitution, etc.?
We don't propose any restriction on those. That was Coda's response, that there are already things like progressive taxes, that these are directly targeted in an economic way to try and redress the economic gap, that we don't think it is either productive or fair to then tax one segment of the population excessively in another way by essentially putting a tax on education, a labor tax, where you have to pay 5 years of labor in return for getting an education. We think that's counterproductive. It sends the wrong message about development to begin with. That's a good starting line for my second point about practical impacts. So why, and this is where closing opposition should really take the first in this debate, because I think Coda gave you a pretty detailed analysis of how incentives work in terms of why people actually will be worse contributors, both on a company level and on an individual level, if they're required to then, once they get this education, come back and work for 3 or 5 years in their home country. First point, on an individual level, there is no incentive for them if they work in a company like Merck or Uniqlo or something like opening government mentioned. There's no incentive for that company to offer them like a line of promotion. Like basic capitalism means they're required to be there as forced labor. No reason why that company has to offer them attractive job opportunities. This is what Coda said when he said we need to actually develop better job opportunities for them. We need to actually have some incentive for them to actually stay there after their 3 years. Otherwise, they're going to just be resentful of the fact they've had to pay this extra tax, that they've lost 3 years of opportunity. They're going to go right back abroad to either finish their education with graduate school or do an internship or get a job or expand all these personal networks you say they have already formed to give themselves better opportunities. Second level of analysis. Rich, privileged people who do not need a university education, and not only that, it's inadequate to start a new business. They have a lot of money already. They travel abroad already. They have international contacts already. They can hire a manager, as is done in so many cases. I don't think that when you start, like, say, a delivery business, that you have to know every aspect of the delivery business. Look at like the Saudi Arabian oil billionaires who have a lot of different kinds of businesses all around the world. I don't think most of them are experts in like their defense industry contracts, their oil production contracts. They don't have petroleum university degrees to do that. So you already have these opportunities if you are so inclined. There's no comparative advantage in terms of forcing people to do something that they will resent, that will give them extra incentive to flee the country. All you're doing is delaying the inevitable and inhibiting long-term growth for your country. And that's why we're proud to oppose.